Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. This is the October feature in the series Reading Booktubers' Favorite Books that I've been doing all year, where I asked a bunch of booktubers to recommend me one of their favorite books and I would read them and vlog my experience and basically hopefully find some new favorites and hopefully agree with them on their love for these books. So this episode features Johanna and she recommended me Stoner by John Williams. And this is sort of like a classic, sort of like a modern classic, I guess. I don't really know what the definition of that is, but this is something that I did have on my radar kind of because it has been making its rounds a little bit in like my corner of BookTube, but it wasn't really something that I knew a whole lot about or that was on my priority list, to be honest. And so I really appreciate the fact that this is what Johanna chose to recommend to me. And I won't spoil my thoughts just yet. First, we are going to hear from her and why she recommended it.
Hi Grace, Johanna here. I am at once excited and nervous for you to read one of my favorite books of all time, Stoner by John Williams. Because on the onset, this is about a seemingly ordinary English college professor, William Stoner, and you get an overview of his very unremarkable life within the first 2 paragraphs of the book, but then you read on and you unpack deeper and deeper layers of what it means to be Stoner and the challenges and conflicts he faces in his marriage, in his home life, and in the bureaucracy of his university career. So this particular book deals with what it means to live a meaningful life, what it means to stand by one's ideals and principles when they're unappreciated and unacknowledged by others. It also deals with what it means to live a successful life, as well as love. This book is about love as much as it is about anything else, and regret and compromise as well. So on the one hand, it's much more quiet and contemplative than the fantasy stories that we're used to reading. But on the other hand, this book is equally poignant and impactful. At least I thought so. I hope you do too, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Okay, first, I will just take a moment to say that I always really love how Johanna talks about books, and it's really just like the word choices that she uses to evoke a feeling. I really just love listening to her. So with that said, and after having heard her reasoning, we'll just jump right into my vlog clips and see what my experience was throughout. Hi friends, it's me. I'm back. It's been a while. And today is the day that I start Stoner by John Williams. It is an overcast, rainy day, which is why the light in front of me is so melancholy. Although the changing leaves in the trees are beautiful, but it's not nice outside. So it's time for me to get cozy and read, and I'm really looking forward to starting this, especially because it comes with basically such high praise from people I trust, like, well, mainly Johanna, because this is her recommendation, but also a few other booktubers that are either friends or that I just kind of usually admire their opinions. So I'm looking forward to getting into this classic. And it doesn't seem super long, but then again, I don't really have a gauge for how like dense it's going to be or what the writing style is like. So we will just see when I get into it how it goes. And I will most likely update after 50 pages is what I usually try to do, but we'll see how fast it goes and when I have stuff to say. Hello. I have read the first 60-ish pages of Stoner just because that was 3 chapters, and I love to stop on a chapter break whenever I'm reading. I wouldn't just stop at 50 pages to give an update, but I do have a lap cat joining me to be cozy and do my reading tonight. So I think I'm enjoying this book. It is a little bit like bizarre in my opinion, which does not mean that it's bad, but it like is actually it's quite good quality writing, but the kind of like emotional quality and the emotions themselves and the relationships at the beginning of this book are a little bit bizarre, especially that of Stoner meeting his like wife and just the relationship that they build, first of all, like very quickly, which I know was more common in history, but their interactions are just bizarre. And there's been some passages throughout this first part of the book that I've really enjoyed. I am really enjoying the writing style as well, But yeah, Stoner is just like, as a character, is just a little bit solitary, a little bit in his own head. And even when we pass a large amount of time in like a chapter, you can still kind of tell that about him, and that's really like being captured. And like I had a lot to say about the first two chapters as well, in terms of like him and his friends slash acquaintances slash colleagues, and especially what his one colleague Masters had to say about like people who are joining the war effort for World War I and people who aren't, and the different types of people that they are in general, and specifically like the main characters. And yeah, there's been some very like interesting familial relationships described so far, just because like even though it's only been 60 pages, we've probably covered like the first maybe 25 years of Stoner's life already, and I'm very intrigued to see where it goes and like the emotional development that happens here, just because like genuinely where we are now with the start of his marriage, I'm just I'm baffled. I find the relationship so strange. So hopefully they'll continue to explore that. After reading almost 30 more pages, I'm at about page 90. I just wanted to like make more comments, just because like the book does move over periods of time quite quickly sometimes, and so we've had the beginning of Stoner and Edith's marriage, and like it's really quite heartbreaking, the distance with which she holds herself, and it's an interesting way of telling the story in that you can't exactly tell what Stoner is like, even though you kind of can, but you see it from his perspective, but you don't see whether he does a good job of trying to make his wife feel comfortable or not. But they both seem like essentially solitary people, or at least she was not ready for any type of relationship with a man. And it really is quite heartbreaking to read any type of like attempts at romance between them, because he wants to make the best of it. And especially kind of everything that happens where she says she'll try to be a good wife, but they both have different ideas of what that means, where she tries to take on like the homemaker role, and Stoner will try to help but realizes it's not well received. And the heartbreaking part for me is that they don't have a rapport with each other. They don't have any sort of comfort or friendship or like the underlying type of love where you can talk freely with one another. They don't have that at all. And now that they've had a child whose name is Grace, I have a feeling that there's going to be more difficulties in their future. So it's just that we've gone through so much of the early years of their marriage already, and it's been about, I guess, 4 years in those last couple of chapters. And it really is, it's emotional, because there's not a lot of the emotion that it feels like there should be between them. There's a lot more negative emotions or even indifference. And it definitely doesn't seem as though it's going to get better, but obviously there still needs to be progress of some sort or change, because there's a whole lot of book left. Okay, hello. So yes, this is my bathroom, but my very helpful father is doing some work in the kitchen for my backsplash that we're putting up, or that he's putting up, really. So bathroom it is, for lack of background noise. So I think it's just over halfway into Stoner now, and I think that the main progress that we've made in terms of like emotional story and growth since the last update is that now we can say pretty definitively that Stoner and his wife are basically like enemies for all intents and purposes, and it's very sad, because I find the relationship that he tries to have with his daughter very like heartwarming and sweet and really just sort of like understated, but it seems like they understand each other. And then after like the crash of the stock market, the stock market, and the suicide of Edith's father is mentioned, and she starts to try and take kind of control of her daughter, it becomes very sad, honestly. And it's sort of counteracted by the fact that Stoner really finds his stride as a teacher and a professor during this time. And I think that it's super interesting what John Williams is doing with that, from somebody who is not well educated in like the types of English classes that Stoner is teaching at the university. It seems to me as though John Williams is like extremely well educated in this type of thing, like Latin, Greek, German, and the classics, and like the fact that he is speculating on like PhD level seminars and what they would say in them. And I find all of that stuff super interesting. So I presume that John Williams is well educated in this area, and it's really coming through in the way that he writes this novel. And I am very intrigued by this sort of like enmity and interaction between Stoner and his one student, because of the fact that the student just seems to be sort of like disrespecting what the whole seminar that Stoner's teaching is meant to be about. And I'm really interested to see what becomes of that, because it seems like Stoner has made an enemy by reprimanding this student that isn't going to let it go. And I do feel sad for him, because it seems like the good part of his life, aka like really coming into his own as a professor, is about to go south, as well as his home life. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Honestly, I find this book very sad. And I think it's just because like it has a lot of commentary to say about how like even if you like depart from what you originally thought your life would be, like when he was younger, he was brought up as a farmer and followed his dreams and became like very well educated in English, which is what he fell in love with. Like even if you do all of that, you can still lead a very unremarkable life, I guess. So I find that very intriguing, and I do find the novel very like emotionally resonant and deep, and there's a lot of like richness going on there. So again, we'll see where it goes from here. Okay, I have only read one more chapter of Stoner, but it was a long one, so I have to tell you that this is something I was not expecting at all. And it's the fact that honestly, Stoner's relationships and just the way that like the trajectory that his life is taking in terms of like the frustration building, and like the fact that he has some power over himself, but there are certain ways in which he just like doesn't have power at all, like say and in his home life, for example. And the fact that like all of these things are coming together honestly makes me think of Fitz, like from Robin Hobb, and how his life unfolds in the Farseer trilogy. And like I won't spoil anything, but just the way that he is treated by some people, and like there's this feeling of helplessness and frustration, and the fact that like people are just at odds with him at every turn in a specific way, that he is just like helpless to, he's trying to do the right thing in a given situation, but people are just thwarting him, and he's helpless to like stop them from doing that. And that's really interesting. And so that is the feeling that I'm getting from the book now. And I just had to say that comparison. I have truly been doing the most today. I have filmed more today than I have filmed in ages, and it was only even 3 videos, but one of them took me like more than an hour and a half. So it's been a day. It's literally been a day of filming, but I have read more of Stoner since I last talked to you, and the sort of place where we're at now is concerning Stoner kind of finding another like relationship in his middle age. And so he's in his early 40s, and he is kind of, you know, it really is sad in a way, because I know I've spoken in my last updates about how parts of his life are really very sad, but it is kind of sad in a way to see a character that like I've really become sensitized to throughout the book, like Stoner, where just now when we're with him in his early 40s is kind of discovering what a relationship can be and like what caring about another person can actually be in an intimate way. And him kind of speculating about what love is and can be and how that view has evolved throughout his life. And it really is very like it's resonating with me, even though I'm obviously not at that age, but just in terms of like having different relationship experiences, and it's very emotional that way. So I'm really enjoying what's being done, and it's obviously like it's not saying that having an affair is good, but I think that the book is just doing a really good job of commenting on like what his situation in life is, what led him and his wife to make the decisions that they make, although maybe not so much her, maybe more just Stoner, and like what he kind of takes away from each of the people that he has relationships with and like what he learns. Yeah, so I've really enjoyed this section, and I think I may finish the book today, so I'll most likely just come back with like a final update. Okay, so last night when I finished Stoner, I was heading straight out to my parents for dinner, so I didn't really have time to film a final clip, but also at the same time as that, I really wasn't entirely sure what I was going to rate it. I thought about it for the whole evening before I decided, and I did settle on a 4.5. I was really, really pleasantly surprised by how this book developed, because it's not as though that I thought I wasn't going to enjoy it at all, especially with it coming with a recommendation specifically for me, but I'm never exactly sure how classics are going to go. And early on in the book, looking back, I understand why we skipped over a lot of Stoner's really early years quite quickly, but I was a little bit afraid that it was going to feel like it was kind of passing me by and I wasn't going to get that deeper emotional connection. But the further we get into the book, we definitely dive in more, and the overall study of Stoner's life and like Stoner as a character is really awesome. And like I thought that there was a lot of richness and depth of emotion that ended up coming out in this book, and it was just incredibly well written. Like the prose and the kind of like speculations about life and about love and the observations that were being made, like just appropriate to the time that we're viewing in Stoner's life and what he's reflecting on. And it was very, very, like, just very well written. I really, really enjoyed that. And I think that I will just like stop there, because I am going to have like the rest of the video for the rest of my final thoughts, like after I've reflected on even a bit more. But I will say that like I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I thought that it was a great reading experience, even if I wasn't always like actually enjoying it, because there was a lot of like frustration and sadness at times throughout this book, but those were the emotions you were supposed to be feeling. So yeah, I will I'll continue on into the like I guess last part of the video where I'm actually wrapping this up, and I'll let you know more of my thoughts. But really, really good outcome. Super glad that I read this. Okay, so I think it was clear, or at least I hope it was, by the end of my thoughts that I was vlogging, how much I was enjoying my experience reading Stoner. I don't remember for sure whether I gave a rating in my final clip, but I ended up rating Stoner 4.5 stars. I really, really did love it. And I just want to kind of express my appreciation for such an understated book. And I totally agree with what Johanna said in her clip on why she recommended this book to me, because you truly have, it's sort of a slow burn and a slow reveal of the true goal and meaning of the story. Because like she mentioned, Stoner's early life is really sort of like it's passed over fairly quickly. It's clear that it's not the focus. It's clear that the focus is going to be on like where his life develops from there and how as a young adult he falls in love with literature at university. And I also got a ton out of it about what it means to live a successful life and also how this book is about love. And I managed to acquire a visitor. So she's helping me out. She loved the book too. So yeah, the thing that stood out the most to me was the fact that Stoner is described as not really being remembered overall by that many of his students or even his colleagues, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't live a successful life, because he got a lot of richness out of what he did, and he genuinely just loved the subject matter and loved like what he was teaching, and he was a man of principles that he stuck to even when it made things more difficult for him. And I think I said this in one of my vlog clips, but there were definitely parts of this book that gave me Robin Hobb vibes in terms of the level of like personal frustration that I felt on behalf of Stoner. And when he's in a situation where he feels kind of powerless and there are a lot of things in his life that aren't necessarily going well, but he still has some strength to cling to, and he experiences love in a bunch of different formats throughout his life. He experiences the type of love that his parents know how to give. He experiences what he thinks is love when he first gets married, and the love that he has for his daughter, and that he tries to do right by her, but he's kind of like squashed down and prevented in that regard in some scenarios, and the love that really blossoms later in life when he meets another person. And I really, I don't know, I really just like enjoyed the exploration of that, because the further that I got into the book, the more deeply you were able to emotionally connect to it. At least that's what I found. And I just found the writing to be phenomenal. It did such a good job of illustrating like the feelings, I think, that John Williams was really trying to convey, and the emotional journeys and everything about that. So this is something that I'm so happy to say that I loved as well, and just like so once again appreciative of Johanna for recommending this to me. And I know that Alan co-signed her recommendation as well, and so I'm so just glad that I got the opportunity to read this. I think it was the writing of this, like just John Williams' writing, that allowed me to really immerse myself and really love it. So I was so happy about that. And this was definitely a successful entry into this series. So I think that that's all I have to say about the book for now, because I will definitely just keep rambling if given the chance. So I will say that that is it for this video. You absolutely should go check out Johanna's channel if you're not already familiar with her. I think you will also love to hear her talk about books. So you should definitely absolutely click on her channel and check her out. And yeah, so please do like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more from me. As always, I'll have my Discord with Ben and my socials linked in the description if you're interested in any of that stuff, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!